That. Narrator, Vera. They say that time heals all wounds, but that's a lie told by people who have never known true grief. For me, time had become the wound itself. 32 days had passed since my husband, David, had slipped away from me, and each tick of the grandfather clock in the hall was a fresh cut. Our house, once a vibrant vessel of laughter, arguments, and life, had become a hollowed-out echo chamber. His scent, a faint, comforting mix of old books and pipe tobacco, was fading from his favorite armchair, and every morning I woke with a jolt of fresh pain to the cold, undisturbed emptiness on his side of our bed. The silence wasn't peace, it was a roaring void, a screaming testament to the 45 years of shared existence that had simply ended. I'd taken to wandering the halls at night, a ghost in my own home, my fingers tracing the life we'd built. The worn spine of his favorite poetry book, the small chip on the kitchen counter from when he tried to teach our son, Leo, how to cook and dropped a cast-iron skillet. The gallery of framed photos on the mantel, our wedding day, where we were two impossibly young kids with nothing but each other and a wild dream. David, his face a mask of pure terror and wonder, holding a tiny, bundled Leo for the first time. A blurry shot of him running alongside our daughter, Isabel, as she finally mastered her two-wheeler. We had built this life, this family, brick by painful, joyful brick. But the two people who were meant to be the living legacy of that love now felt like strangers. My children, Leo and Isabel, seemed to operate in a different reality, one where their father's passing was a sad but necessary administrative hurdle to be cleared. Grief was an inconvenience, a brief, mandatory performance before the main event. And today was the day the curtains would rise. The law offices of Harrison and Finch were a world away from my warm, memory-filled home. The air smelled of old leather, lemon polish, yasish, and the kind of quiet, intimidating wealth that makes you feel you should apologize for breathing. I sat on a stiff, unforgiving chair that felt as cold as my own skin. Across the vast mahogany desk, a battlefield of polished wood separating us, sat my children. Leo, now 42, was a slick, handsome echo of his father, but he wore his ambition like expensive armor. Where David's eyes held warmth, Leo's held only a sharp, calculating glint. He tapped his fingers impatiently on the arm of his chair, the gold of his Rolex winking in the sterile office light. Beside him, his wife, Chloe, sat ramrod straight, her expression a carefully curated mask of solemnity that didn't quite reach her predatory eyes. Isabel, my Izzy, was 38. She had inherited my eyes, but she used them as tools, constantly scanning her surroundings for opportunities. She had built a career as a lifestyle influencer, curating a life of flawless beige aesthetics and hollow affirmations for her online followers. Even in her impeccable black silk dress, she looked less like a grieving daughter and more like she was scouting a location for a somber chic photo shoot. Her husband, Greg, a man who seemed to have faded into her background, sat beside her, nodding obsequiously whenever she spoke. In the car on the way over, their conversation had been a quiet ballet of greed. I'd pretended to be asleep, but I heard every word. Dad. Sound of a car interior, soft road noise. Voices are hushed but clear. Leo, voiceover, whispering. The realtor says the market is peaking. We could list the house by next month and get 7 figures. Easy. It's too much house for Mom anyway. Isabel, voiceover, whispering. And Dad's stock portfolio. Greg and I were looking at a penthouse downtown. The views are incredible. It would be amazing content. We just need to handle this sensitively for Mom's sake. Sensitively. They spoke of sensitivity while carving up my life like a Thanksgiving turkey. They weren't just moving on from their father's death. They were treating it as a corporate merger, a lucrative acquisition. And I was just the retiring CEO being politely shown the door. Sound of a heavy, leather-bound folder being opened on a wooden desk. Mr. Harrison, a man whose gentle wrinkles told the story of a long and thoughtful life, peered at us over his half-moon glasses. He had been David's friend since their raucous college days, a kind, steady presence at our wedding, at our children's christenings, and now at the end of it all. His eyes, when they met mine, were full of a deep, unspoken apology. Mr. Harrison, voiceover. His voice is old, gentle, and heavy with sadness. Thank you all for coming on this difficult day. We are here, as you know, to read the last will and testament of David Miller. He was more than a client. He was my brother. The world is a lesser place without him. He paused, his voice catching. Let us proceed. He cleared his throat, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. I held my breath. Mr. Harrison, voiceover. I, David Miller, being of sound mind and body. Second, regarding my primary residence, located at 142 Oak Drive, with all its furnishings and contents, I give and bequeath this property in its entirety to my son, Leo David Miller. A jolt, sharp and electric, shot through me. The house. My home. The garden I had tended for 40 years. The kitchen where I taught Izzy how to bake my mother's apple pie. The study where David and I would read for hours in comfortable silence. It was all Leo's. I chanced to look at him. A slow, triumphant smile was spreading across his face. He leaned over and whispered something to Chloe, who patted his arm with a look of pure, unadulterated pride. He had won the grand prize. My gaze drifted to Isabel. A flash of raw jealousy crossed her face before she expertly smoothed it over, her expression returning to one of cool detachment. Her turn was coming. Mr. Harrison, voiceover. Third, regarding my financial assets, I give and bequeath my entire stock portfolio, managed by Morgan Stanley, along with all liquid assets, bonds, and holdings within my personal investment accounts, to my daughter, Isabel Ann Miller. He paused, looking at the document. The current valuation of these assets is approximately $2,150,000. A sharp, audible intake of breath, quickly stifled. It was Isabel. She brought a hand to her chest in a practiced gesture of surprise, but her eyes were alight with a feverish, victorious gleam. $2 million, the money David and I had painstakingly saved, penny by painful penny, from the early days when we ate ramen noodles and dreamed of the future. It was all for them, we had always told ourselves, for their security. Now it was just a number on a page, a prize to be claimed. Her husband, Greg, couldn't contain his excitement. My God, Izzy, he whispered, his voice full of awe. We're set. We're truly set for life. They had forgotten I was even in the room. I was a spectator at the public auction of my own life. A knot of ice formed in my stomach. The house was gone. The money was gone. There was nothing left. What about me? What was left for Vera? Mr. Harrison seemed to sense the shift in the room. He took a long, slow breath, and his gentle face was etched with a deep sadness. He looked directly at me, his eyes full of a pity that made my skin crawl. He turned back to the page. Mr. Harrison, voiceover. And finally, to my beloved wife, Vera, my partner, my confidant, my rock, the woman who stood by me when I had nothing but a dream, and who made every day of my life a gift, the quiet strength behind everything I ever accomplished. To her, I leave all my love and my eternal, undying thanks, for she already possesses what is most valuable in this world. Music cuts abruptly. The low hum of the building's ventilation is the only sound. Silence. A profond, crushing, absolute silence. The words echoed in my head. All my love, my thanks. He had left me a poem in a legal document, a beautiful, romantic, and utterly worthless sentiment. A wave of dizziness and hot, suffocating humiliation washed over me. I was 65 years old, a widow, and apparently destitute. I had no home. I had no money. I had nothing but the black dress on my back and a lifetime of memories that now felt like a cruel cosmic joke. And then, through the ringing in my ears, I heard it. A low, cruel snicker. It's quickly suppressed, but unmistakable. It was Leo. He was trying to hide it, looking down at his lap, but his shoulders were shaking with suppressed laughter. Isabel, catching his eye, let out a low giggle, covering her mouth with her hand in a pathetic attempt at subtlety. Their amusement was a physical blow. It knocked the air from my lungs. Leo, voiceover. A harsh, mocking whisper, meant for Chloe, but loud enough for me to hear. Can you believe it? Rich in love. I guess that means we won't have to worry about finding her a room at our place. She can live on gratitude. Isabel, voiceover, her voice dripping with condescension. Don't be so awful, Leo. I'm sure Mother will be fine. We'll help her find a nice little senior's apartment. Something affordable. She can decorate it with all her valuable memories. Maybe she can take that old chipped teapot she likes so much. The room tilted. My own children, my babies, they were carving up my life and laughing as they did it. They saw me as a burden they had just been miraculously freed of. An old piece of furniture to be offloaded. I squeezed my eyes shut, wishing the floor would open up and swallow me whole. In that darkness, a memory surfaced, sharp and vivid. Torriby. Sound shifts. We hear the gentle hiss of a gas heater, the distant sound of city traffic. The sound is slightly echoey, like a memory. Narrator, Vera. I was 20 years old, sitting in our tiny one-bedroom apartment. The air smelled of instant coffee and the paint I'd been using for my art history thesis. David was sitting across from me, his head in his hands. He'd just been rejected for a bank loan for the third time. His dream, a new kind of durable industrial polymer, was dying before it could even begin. His shoulders slumped in defeat. David, voiceover, young, full of despair. It's over, Vera. They don't see it. They don't see what I see. A man in a suit just told me to stick to my day job. Oh, narrator, Vera. I looked at him, at the fire of genius in his eyes being extinguished by doubt. The day before, a letter had arrived. My father, who had passed a year prior, had left me $50,000. It was a fortune. It was my safety net, my future. I stood up, went to the dresser, and pulled out the bank book. I walked back and placed it in his hands. Vera, voiceover, young, full of conviction. No, it's not over. I see it. I see what you see. Take it. All of it. Let's build something together. David, voiceover, young, voice choked with emotion. Vera, no, I can't. This is everything you have. Vera, voiceover, young, smiling. No, David. You are everything I have. This is just paper. Sound of the memory fades. We are back in the cold, silent office. I opened my eyes. The memory, instead of comforting me, felt like another stab of betrayal. Just paper, I had said. Now that paper was all my children could see. But when I opened my eyes, the scene had shifted. Mr. Harrison was no longer looking at the will. He had taken off his glasses and was staring at Leo and Isabel. The gentle, grandfatherly man was gone. In his place was a judge, and his face was a mask of cold, righteous fury. Mr. Harrison, voiceover. His voice was no longer gentle. It was sharp, cutting, and loud. The reading of your father's will is complete. But our business here is not finished. The laughter died in their throats. Leo's smug expression dissolved into one of annoyed confusion. What are you talking about, Harrison? It's all been distributed. It's over. Isabel, voiceover, her voice sharp with impatience. Yes, we have arrangements to make. If there's nothing else. Mr. Harrison, voiceover, cutting her off with a look that could freeze fire. There is something else. Your father's will was one document. His legacy, his true legacy, is contained in another. Sound of a heavy, wax-sealed envelope being placed firmly on the wooden desk. The sound is definitive and loud. From his worn leather briefcase, Mr. Harrison produced a thick manila envelope, yellowed with age. It was sealed with a circle of dark red wax, bearing the old stylized M logo David had designed on our kitchen table all those years ago. My name, Vera Miller, was written across the front in David's unmistakable, bold handwriting. Isabel, voiceover, ski, gee, scoffing. Oh, for heaven's sake, what is that? A sentimental old love letter? Can't you just give it to her so we can leave? Mr. Harrison, voiceover. His eyes never left Isabel's, and they were filled with a chilling disappointment. This, Isabel, is not a love letter, though in a way, it is the greatest testament to your father's love that I have ever seen. This is a founder's declaration and a binding partnership agreement. It predates your father's will by decades. It was signed on April 12, 1978, the day Miller Industries was officially incorporated. Dramatic, suspenseful music begins to build softly, a low, ominous hum. With a deliberate, almost ceremonial movement, Mr. Harrison cracked the old wax seal. The sound snapped through the silent room like a gunshot. He carefully unfolded the 2 pages within. The paper was old, the typewritten words slightly faded. My children, who had been ready to leave just moments before, were now leaning forward, their greed momentarily replaced by a wary, nervous curiosity. Mr. Harrison began to read, his voice now imbued with a formal legal authority that commanded absolute attention. Mr. Harrison, voiceover, reading with powerful, deliberate emphasis. Article 1. Let it be known that Miller Industries, hereinafter referred to as the company, was founded on this day, April 12, 1978, with an initial seed investment of $50,000. $50,000. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. Mr. Harrison, voiceover, his voice growing stronger. Article 2. This foundational capital, which formed the entire basis for the company, was not sourced from my own funds. This capital was the entirety of the inheritance left to my wife, Vera Miller, by her late father. It was her entire life savings, given freely and with full faith in this venture. He looked up, first at me with a look of profound respect, and then at my children with a look of utter disdain. Mr. Harrison, voiceover, his voice now reaching a crescendo. Article 3. In consideration of this foundational investment, the condition was simple and is legally irrevocable. I, David Miller, would act as the chief executive officer and public face of the company, managing all day-to-day operations. However, the true ownership, the foundational power, a controlling stake of 51% of all company shares and assets, would now and forevermore belong to Vera Miller, who is hereby recognized as the silent majority partner and co-founder of Miller Industries. The music swells to a powerful, dramatic climax, then cuts to absolute, shocking silence. The world stopped. The blood drained from my children's faces, leaving them a pasty, sickly white. Leo's mouth hung open, his face a grotesque mask of disbelief. Isabel looked as though she had been struck by lightning, her perfectly made-up face crumbling into confusion and horror. Leo, voiceover. His voice was a strangled, pathetic whisper. No, that can't be right. What does that mean? Mr. Harrison slowly folded the document. He looked at Leo, not with anger anymore, but with a kind of weary pity. Mr. Harrison, voiceover. His voice was now calm, but each word was a hammer blow. It means, Leo, that the house you just inherited was, in fact, a company asset, purchased with company funds, and therefore it belongs to the majority owner. The cars in the garage are company cars. The $2 million stock portfolio your father so brilliantly managed was, in fact, a portion of the company's investment profits, held in an account under his name for tax purposes. Your father was an employee of this company, a visionary, a genius, and a very well-paid employee, yes, but an employee nonetheless. All this time, you haven't been living off your father's fortune. You've been living off your mother's. In that moment, a lifetime of feeling secondary, of being just a housewife, of being the quiet supporter behind the great man, it all dissolved. It wasn't a supporting role. It was a silent partnership. The foundation. A strange, unfamiliar strength bloomed in my chest. It pushed out the grief, the humiliation, the shock. It was clarity, cold, hard, and absolute. For the first time since I'd entered the room, I looked directly at my children. I found my voice. It did not tremble. It was a voice they had never heard before, the voice of a CEO, the voice of a founder. Narrator Vera. My voice, now calm and firm, and resonating with an authority that stunned them into silence. Your father and I, we used to talk late at night. He always held out hope. He believed that deep down, you were good people who had just been lost. I was less certain. I feared we had given you so much that you had learned the price of everything and the value of nothing. I stood up from the cold leather chair. The movement was slow, deliberate. I felt taller, stronger. Narrator, Vera, continued. This cruel, painful document, it wasn't an oversight. It was your father's final, desperate gamble. A test of your character to see what you would do when you thought I had nothing left to give. I walked around the desk, standing directly in front of them. And you both failed. You didn't just fail. You failed spectacularly. You laughed. Isabel finally broke, her face crumpling into sobs. Mother, no, we didn't mean it. We were just surprised. We love you. Narrator, Vera. I held up a single hand, and the word died in her throat. Enough. Enough lies. The time for words is over. The time for consequences has begun. I let my new authority settle around me like a mantle. I was no longer the grieving widow. I was the matriarch. Narrator, Vera. I left them there, frozen in their new reality, and walked out into the bright sunlight. I didn't drive home. I had the driver take me to the headquarters of Miller Industries, a gleaming glass tower I hadn't set foot in for over a decade. The next evening, there was a knock at my door. It was Leo and Isabel, their spouses hovering nervously behind them. Their faces were pale, their eyes red-rimmed. Scene needs Leo, voiceover, his voice stripped of its arrogance, now pleading. Mom, Vera, we need to talk. This is insane. You can't just take everything. Narrator, Vera. I looked at them, standing on the porch of the house they thought was theirs. I haven't taken anything, Leo. I am simply claiming what has always been mine. The house is mine. The cars are mine. The money is mine. You have 1 week to vacate. Isabel, voiceover, crying now, the performance of a lifetime. But where will we go? What will we do? You're throwing us out on the street, after everything Dad wanted for us. Narrator, Vera. My voice was calm, unyielding. Your father wanted you to be good people. That was his only real inheritance. As for what you will do, that brings me to my offer. On Monday morning, at 7 a.m. sharp, you will both report to the Miller Industries Central Warehouse. You will report to the floor manager, a man named Frank, who has worked for this company for 30 years. You will be given uniforms and steel-toed boots. Your starting salary will be minimum wage. You will sweep floors, you will pack boxes, and you will learn the names of the people whose hard work paid for your expensive cars and designer clothes. You will learn the value of $1 that you have earned with your own sweat. Leo voiceover, sputtering with rage. You're joking. You want me, a vice president of finance, to sweep floors? Me, narrator Vera. You were a vice president at a bank that your father's influence helped you get into. Here, you will earn your title. This is not a punishment, it is an education. The one your father and I failed to give you. You can accept it, or you can walk away with nothing but the designer clothes on your backs. The choice is yours. I closed the door on their stunned faces. Gentle but strong and empowering piano music begins to fade in. It is hopeful and forward-looking. Narrator, Vera. The following Monday, I drove myself to the Miller Industries headquarters. I walked through the gleaming lobby, my heels clicking on the marble floor. In the main hall hung a large, oil-painted portrait of David, his eyes seeming to twinkle. I stood before it for a long time. "Oh, David," I whispered to the portrait. "You magnificent, stubborn, brilliant man. You always did love a good drama." I felt his presence then, not as a sad memory, but as a proud partner. He hadn't left me. He had simply handed me the reins. A few months have passed. I now sit in the CEO's office. My office. I am learning the business I have owned for 45 years, and I find that I have a knack for it. My father's business sense, my own quiet observations over the years, they are all coming to the surface. The company is thriving. And my children? They took the job. Every morning, I get a report from Frank. He tells me Leo is sullen but efficient. He says Isabel cried for the first week, but has now learned to operate a forklift. They are tired. They are humbled. They are learning. I don't know if they will ever understand the lesson their father tried to teach them. I don't know if they will ever earn back my trust. But for the first time in their lives, they are building something of their own. My name is Vera Miller. My husband left me his love. And in his love, he left me a challenge, a purpose, a kingdom to command. He gave me back myself, and that, I now know with a certainty that settles deep in my bones, is the only inheritance that truly matters.